Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Chicago, Zooming with the Alderman series of interviews. My name is Olayinka Adekoya. The League was founded 101 years ago right here in Chicago. The League is a nonpartisan political organization, which is most important, very important, encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government. Two, works to increase understanding of major political issues and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The Chicago League is one of hundreds of local leagues all across the country. These interviews with the aldermen are part of our efforts to educate people about those who represent us in setting the policies and ordinances that govern us here in Chicago. Today, our alderman is Alderman Nugent of the 39th Ward. Welcome, Alderman.
Thank you.
We appreciate you taking time to be with us. We're so excited. Please know that this Zoom session is being recorded and will be available for viewing after today on the League's website. We will be sending you, Alderman Nugent, and everyone who's registered for this program who is not a member, a link to the video when it becomes available. Also, everyone should know that we have provided the Alderman a copy of the questions I'll be asking ahead of time. Before starting on those questions, we want to show you a map of all the 50 wards in Chicago. Next, we would like to show you your ward. Excellent, very interesting ward. Excellent, excellent. Now, we would like to get started with a series of questions we're going to ask you, and we'd like to learn a lot more about you, what you're doing, and some of the interesting things that you and your constituents are doing in this ward and how you all are helping to develop Chicago and bring a lot of, let's say, comfort to the constituents in your ward. The first question I'm going to ask you is, please describe your ward. Where is it, and what are the main boundaries? What neighborhoods does it include? What is the makeup of the ward? Residential, commercial, industrial?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. I know you just showed a map of the ward. I might not be able to see it on mine, but I usually travel with a map. I have one, but it doesn't show up so well. I'm on the northwest side of the city of Chicago. I represent the 39th Ward. And if you're looking on that map right now, on the north, that is Devon, that's my north border. And so just north of my northern border, you actually hit Lincolnwood on that west side. And if you move that mouse all the way over to the west side, for a point of reference, that's Superdog, like the hot dog stand. So you kind of have an idea of where you are. If you go all the way over to the east side, we pretty much hit the river. That's how far east we go. And then on the very southern border, just for reference, that is Irving Park. So it is a very, very big ward, incredibly diverse. I think if you look at the picture, it looks a bit like Picasso drew the state of Texas. That's sort of what my visual is. We are a community of many neighborhoods. We have Gladstone Park, Edgebrook, Forest Glen, Mayfair, Saguenash Park, Brynford Park, Hollywood Park, North Park, Old Irving Park, West Walker, and we cover about a third of Albany Park. It is primarily residential, but we also have commercial and industrial spaces. And we also are home to beautiful forest preserves and a lot of parks. We have a lot of really incredible green space up here. So that's sort of the 39th Ward in a bit of a nutshell.
Excellent, excellent. What are some of the few key issues facing the people of your ward? We've spoken to quite a few aldermen, and they all have, a variety of interesting different issues. Some are great, some are challenging, some are not as challenging. But we'd love to hear, what are some of the few key issues facing the people of your ward?
Well, I think the issue that is top of mind for everybody in the city, and in my ward is no exception, is public safety. That is what we get most of our calls on and what most people are concerned about. If you look to our ward, we're served by 2 police districts in the city. So Cicero cuts down pretty much the middle of my ward. And if you go to the east of Cicero, we are served by the 17th Police District. They're fantastic. We have a great partnership with them, but they are the lowest staff police district in the city. And so there's a lot of concerns if we have enough manpower and resources. And then to the east of Cicero, excuse me, to the west of Cicero, we are served by the 16th district under Commander Begain, and another, another great district, great partnership, but they are the third lowest staff district in the city, and they cover over 28 square miles. So most of our calls are about public safety and making sure that we have the resources we need in the ward.
Great, excellent. When did you first join the city council?
Yeah, I'm a newbie. So this is my
Okay.
first term. I joined in 2019. So I'm about a year away from another election. This is my first term.
Excellent, excellent. Why did you decide to run for alderperson? I mean,
Yeah.
at that time in your life, what was going on? What changes were you feeling? What were you experiencing?
Yeah, so I've loved public service my whole life. I've loved government my whole life. I loved that song, I'm Just a Bill Stuck on Capitol Hill. I loved social studies. And so all of my work prior to being elected for over 20 years, I worked in different capacities in government, whether I was working for elected officials. I interned for United States Senator Chris Dodd. I worked for Attorney General Lisa Madigan. I did advance for President Clinton, or actually I worked for Mayor Daley in his Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. I was the Chief of Staff for Homeland Security for Cook County. I was always the person behind the person. I was able to do a ton of work on policy, advocacy. I had great jobs and I loved them. But then something happened before the 2019 elections. I started really thinking about, do I have value to add here? And can I move the needle in the right direction? And as this was happening, the world had sort of changed a little bit, and I'm not necessarily sure for the better. I'm a parent, my husband and I have 3 children, and at dinner every night, I always say, tell me something you heard in the news today. Tell me something you learned in the world. And, like most Chicagoans, my kitchen radio probably has on WBEZ or WBBM or things like that. And this was about the time that we were gearing into the 2016 presidential elections. And some candidates were using words that I would not let my children repeat at the dinner table. And I wouldn't let them use that as an excuse for not engaging. And I thought, you know what, I can add value to this conversation. I'm pretty good at engaging stakeholders. And I really believe, and I still believe, that I can move this needle in the right direction and be a change agent for good. And so that is really what got me into this. I've always loved public service. This was just sort of an extension on the work I'd already been doing.
Excellent, excellent. Do you have any other employment? I can't see you really having, because your job is so full and intense and wonderful.
Yeah, no, this is my only job, and this job is what you make of it. There aren't enough hours in the day to do this job.
I can imagine. I know.
And I really think that I love what I do, and it's really important to me, and it needs all of my attention.
Yeah, exactly. Great, great. You serve as the vice chair of the Environmental Protection Energy Committee of the council.
Mhm.
What matters typically come before this committee?
Yeah, this is a great committee to be on, to be a vice chair. It was really important for me to be on this committee. So when I was in law school, I actually clerked in the Attorney General's office in environmental litigation. I think it's the right time. So this committee, I am the vice chair, as you mentioned. We deal with all things environment and energy. So there's been a lot of meetings surrounding decarbonization. How do we reduce our carbon footprint as a city? How are we going to design our city and buildings moving forward? Charging stations for electric vehicles, recycling. The city of Chicago and our recycling rate is pretty sad. We're south of 10%. Composting, you name it, anything that sort of touches in the environmental arena, that's what we work on. As vice chair, I support the chairman in this committee in the work that he does. And of course, should he not be at a committee meeting, I can assume the chairmanship in his absence.
Excellent. What, if any, changes would you like to see made in the operation of the council?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I have tremendous amount of respect for the body politic of the council. I looked to the rule book, the pocket guide, and I was looking for, here it is. this is the rule book that the rules of order, and you'll hear a lot of people talking about the rules. This is our North Star. We have to abide by this book. I think something that frustrates me with council is sometimes when we challenge motions, you have to be comfortable with getting a no for an answer. And that's part of being an adult. That's adulting. Not everybody in elections, we have winners and we have losers. And this is sort of this moment right now in time where, I lose an election and I say fake news or not, you didn't count right. No, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. And when you raise a motion in council, if your motion's denied, okay. And then you move on, right? And you have to be smarter, quicker, better, more prepared. And so I think I would like to see more respect for processes, and I'd like to see more graciousness. We can, I don't know exactly who coined the phrase, we can disagree without being disagreeable. I give it to Catherine Graham, who is the editor of the Washington Post, and she used it in the context I know, talking about inviting the very senators to dinner at her home that were trying to shut her down in the halls of Senate. And so I think we need to establish cordiality and respect in the chambers. We weren't elected to all agree. We were elected to have debate and discourse, but we can do that in a more respectable manner. And I think
exactly,
our kids are watching us, right?
Yeah.
If our kids get in a fight in school, or what happens, the principal probably puts them both in the room in detention. Well, what happens when we fight? Like, we just go off into our own separate silos. That's counter to what we're telling our kids to do. So a little bit of graciousness and a little bit more of maybe, well, I don't know, we can't do as I say, not as I do. Maybe we have to do what we say we're going to do. So.
Exactly. I have one quick question, just in that arena where you're discussing, what would that look like? If you can give us a snippet of what would that look like, this new processes you just discussed?
Well, I think it's maybe just practicing the golden rule. We all know what good looks like, and we all know what respect and cordiality look like. And it's not easy all the time, but we'll know it when we see it. And I don't pretend to be perfect, but I try to encompass those values. And I think it's important in how we engage. We all don't have to love all of the elected officials in this world, from city council to president. But I try to, just in my own life and in my own family, act respectfully, respect the office holder, be respectful. And sometimes it's painful, but I think it's the right thing to do.
Excellent. You're 100% right. What are a few of the actions by the city to reduce gun violence that you think have been effective or will be effective?
This is a really tough one, and this is really personal for me, for a whole slew of reasons. But I don't think we've done enough at any level to deal with gun violence, because if somebody loses a child to gun violence, I don't want to give anybody my thoughts and prayers. I don't want to do that. I think that at a macro level, we have to treat this like the public health crisis it is, because legislatively, more on a federal level, but even on a state and then local level, depending on the power that is in charge, we make some laws that take 2 steps forward during X, Y, and Z's administration, and then we take a few steps back during a different administration, and it's not working. Our kids are learning shelter in place drills. We have more shootings than any other developed countries in the world right now. I'm mortified and embarrassed that this is the world we live in. And I also, something that happened just in this past week that just is incredibly disappointing to me is that it's my understanding the governor of Indiana signed a law yesterday that says that you no longer need licenses to have a gun. And what does that say? We already have a problem with guns crossing into our borders, and I can't imagine this is going to help that. That scares me. So I think we have to look at this as a public health crisis, right, at a macro level. And something that I think about is, date myself, 40 something years ago, right, in the early 80s, doctors were the ones that started pushing on Congress and the Senate to require car seats, not the auto manufacturers. They used it as a public health crisis, right? We need these car seats. And you took take some of the politics out of the equation and you look at this as a public health crisis. Well, now nobody puts a baby on their lap in the car anymore. Everybody's got these car seats. And so I would really like to take the politics out of guns and gun violence and look at all the public health issues that we have surrounding it. Just obviously the physical damage to somebody that is shot and the recovery, but then the damage to a family and their community when you lose somebody, it's just irreparable. And families and communities are destroyed from that. So that you have that. And then I have to get super granular and say, okay, how am I dealing with this in my own community, my own ward here in 39? And so, as I mentioned earlier, I have 2 police districts here, and how do I help them to deal with this? So I look at the tools I have in my toolkit. As I mentioned, the 17th district is the lowest staffed and 16 is the 3rd lowest staffed. So what we tried to do is we put in, the 17th district has something called an SDSC, Strategic Defense Support Center. They call them nerve centers. Basically, it's a big kind of computer and data room. So we have one in the 17th district, and I worked really hard to get funding for one in the 16th, which became operational in the fall. And what it does is it puts intelligence analysts in these rooms with computers and technology, sort of following the crime and the trends and gunshots and all the things. And then those analysts work with the commanders in those districts to deploy officers in a more strategic way, because we're all doing more with less. And we want to be strategic and smart about it. If we're sending officers into an area where shots are fired, we want to be able to let them know shots fired, right? Is your camera on? Is your bulletproof vest on? Do you have critical and situational awareness for the situation you're about to go in? So that's something we do. I have always personally worked really hard to get more personnel, but as I mentioned, it's hard. I have lower staff districts, and something else we do is we really work with the CAPS meetings. We are always trying to encourage dialogue, and we invest in our schools. We want to give kids a place to be after school and in our parks, so they're not getting in trouble and potentially going to guns. And the other thing is, look, we do get people arrested on gun charges, and it's usually called unlawful use of a weapon, UUW. I don't think gun offenders should be let back out that same day. And a lot of times I'm seeing gun offenders back on the street. And I think those are wider conversations that, I know we hear about it in the news all the time, but between our city and the mayor's office and the superintendent and the state's attorney and whoever else wants to engage in those conversations. But I think we have to look quite carefully at people that we're letting out of jail.
Excellent. One last question in that arena. What are 1 or 2 other actions you think the city should take to reduce gun violence? Because the city says they're doing this, they're doing that, but what are 1 or 2 key areas you think the city could, things they could do to reduce violence in this area, in the city of Chicago?
Well, I think we've looked at a lot of different things, and I'm not sure what the perfect answer is, and I'm not going to pretend to tell you, but I think we probably have to engage with, or at least try. And I know we've tried, so I don't want to throw stones. If it was so easy, we wouldn't have these problems. I think it's a real fundamental problem that the states we border have much looser and laxer gun laws. And so I do think we might need to do something on a federal level with guns. I mean, I think that's critically important. If you look on the East Coast, particularly a state like Connecticut following Sandy Hook, they really tightened their gun laws. When the states surrounding Connecticut tightened their gun laws, Connecticut's gun issues, gun violence went down a little bit. So it's the city, and it's bigger than the city. We're going to need some help surrounding with gun laws. I think that we've made some headway, but we can always do more about having officers, beat officers really in those beats, engaging with the communities they serve, so that they create a rapport with the community, so the community would feel comfortable telling the officers when they know things about crimes. A lot of times we have folks that just won't share information, whether they're afraid or they just don't trust the police.
Yeah, and that's a culture it's kind of deadly and dangerous, because it kind of prevents us from moving forward. It really does.
Yeah.
But that's unfortunate. League members have observed that the committees and then the council regularly pass agenda items for which the actual contents and text of what is being approved are not available for the public to see until the days after the meeting. This is because of the provision in Rule 41 that allows the mayor and city government's departments to present direct introduction to items up to the committee Because no text is posted, the public does not have a chance to read or comment before the vote is taken. Would you support requiring that any such items and their text be made available with an assigned item number to the public no later than 2 business days prior to the meeting? And that was a lot I asked you. And if you want me, I mean, do you want me to reread it again? Because I
I
know
got
it's a
it.
lot.
No, I get you. Look,
Okay.
in a perfect world, I want the public to have everything right away. But I think it's important for folks to understand the reality
Right.
of what we're doing in there. So that little book, the little book I was showing you before, I think you can see her. There she is. There are provisions in there that allow us to do things on the fly and on the floor, because sometimes we recognize that, oh my goodness, as written, we use the word shall instead of may, and shall means must and may mean can. And that could really mean totally different things. And we need to be able to have the ability to amend on the fly. So look, in a perfect world, I want you to have everything in advance. But operationally, I just want to put it out there that sometimes we do have to change things on the fly. So I recognize why we can do that, but yeah, you're right. In a perfect world, I'd love for you to have it all in advance.
Yeah, and government is always changing and moving, and we're in new times. So what you're saying, is totally appropriate, totally cool, and totally appropriate. Currently, when one candidate for mayor or alderman does not receive at least 50% plus one vote in the February election, the top two vote getters are on the ballot in a runoff election in April. What is your view about using ranked choice voting in February to determine the winner in lieu of the runoff?
So I'm really just for transparent processes. And so right now, the way we have it right now is as you said. So roughly in February, whoever runs goes. If nobody gets 50% plus one, they go to the runoff. That's how it's codified in the law right now. And so I respect that process. I'm more into the turnout. I want people engaged and I want people voting. If the powers of folks decide ranked choice might be the way they want to go, I'm open to the conversation. For me, it's about whatever we codify into law, it has to be transparent. The public has to have been engaged in how it was created, and it's effectuated in such a way that it encourages people to go to the polls versus puts barriers to the polls. That's sort of where my heart and head are. And just a transparent, open process. Let's get people out there.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just being really naive when it comes to that, but when I read about it, I was thinking to myself, it made me think of like almost like the popular vote. If we were to, and I may be totally off on this, but if we were to, go with the popular vote, I guess some people would have been in versus other people would have been in. But I know this whole process would be quite challenging. I think it would require a lot of education, a lot of education, a lot of education.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'm a big believer in engaging in the rules as they're currently written in law. I'm always open for new conversations, but like you said, if it's transparent and if we understand the rules and they're accessible, I mean, just in our own word, I know we've done a lot of work with other folks in the city just to make sure that our polling places are accessible, things like that.
Right, excellent. If the league wanted to support one of your initiatives, what steps would you recommend the league take?
Well, I would love it if the league were supporting some of the stuff I was working on. It's real traditional methods of engagement, calling your alderman, potentially writing some letters of support. I'm a big coalition builder. So I would hope that if you guys were wanting to be supportive of something I'm working on, you'd look to the people that I look to too. So for example, when I'm trying to work on something, I usually I share an office with, so I can knock on the door of my state representative, because he obviously represents this district too, say, hey, this is something I'm working on. Can you help me with it? Perhaps you have some funding I don't know about or can assist. Can I count you in as a supporter? I do the same thing with my state senator and ask him the same questions, but then I go bigger. The 39th ward, we are represented by 2 county commissioners. And so I talk to both of them. I seek their approval. I want their buy-in, but I also go to my congressman. He's a really valuable asset too. See if he'll be involved. And I call my senators, my 2 US senators, right? There's a project usually pretty good if you've got your alderman, your state rep, your state senator, your congressman, your 2 county commissioners, and your US senators on board. And then I ask the mayor or the governor, go big. And if I can get all those folks on board, I want you to write to me. I want you to write to my other colleagues in council, and then I want you to write to those guys too, because that's where you get that traction, because you start engaging all different stakeholders as you go up the levels of government. And I think that's really important.
Excellent, excellent. Got one last question for you.
Sure.
What are several things you would like to get done, or at least get started, during the remainder of your term, which ends in 2023?
Yeah, this is a great question. So here's a couple of things that I'm really looking to make happen by the next one. So we've invested a lot in our schools and parks, like a lot. It's a top priority, right? Because when we were talking about issues earlier, right? The kids need something to do after school. They need to be engaged. I would say idle hands do the devil's work. We got to keep everybody busy. So we have a major construction project happening at Sauganash School right now. The school was, I want to say 136% above capacity. This construction project, we broke ground about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. Once completed, each classroom will have three classrooms per grade, no more art on a cart. The gymnasium will be able to handle several gym classes at once. It'll be a really tremendous project. So that's one I'm really proud of. And that should be done right about a year from now. Libraries are a really big deal to me. I love libraries. I'm a huge fan of Chicago Public Library, particularly. I have 3 in my ward. I have Edgebrook and Albany Park, but I also have the Mayfair Library, and Mayfair Library can use a little love. So we are working hopefully to either find a new space for Mayfair or invest in the current piece of real estate that Mayfair is sitting on and make it much better, so that it's not just a place to get books, which I love and I regularly go pick them up once a week, but it's where you can maybe get access to some city services or help with your taxes, wraparound services, internet. There's all these things, programming. It's a beautiful place and space to engage with your community. So that's something we're looking at. And 2 other things that we work on. You had mentioned earlier, participatory budgeting. That is a project that I started right when I was elected in 2019, and we do it annually. Participatory budgeting is a process by which I put aside a portion of my menu money, which is money that each alderman gets each year to support projects in their ward. I take $500,000 of my menu money, and we have a committee from my ward of folks that offer up programming and ideas, and then it's voted on democratically for anybody 14 or older in the ward. So we've done things like murals and park projects, but we've also fixed streets and sidewalks. It's the community deciding how to spend this money. Bus benches by the bus. So we'll hopefully get another round of participatory budgeting in within the next year. We just closed out this year. And then finally, I'm really proud that we just created something called an SSA. It's just a lot of letters that stands for Special Service Area. And it's a business corridor. It's Lawrence, part of Pulaski, Montrose, Elston. And these folks came together and decided they'd like to put a tax upon themselves. And this money, it'll be $285,000 a year, and they could use that money how they see fit. So for example, if you or I each own a business next door to each other, it's a lot more expensive if you and I both pay for our snow removal, or perhaps our lawn mowing and flowers and beautification. They could pull this money and collectively hire snow removal or garden and maintenance. They could do signage, neighborhood identifiers. They could do planting. So I really am looking forward to this investment, and we will see some of the fruits of this new SSA over the next year. And so I'm pretty thrilled about it.
It almost reminds me of an HOA version for a business.
That's exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that can get crazy sometimes, but the businesses would be a little bit more structured. The housing part gets a little crazy.
Sure, I've been part of HOAs.
Right. Okay, Alderman Nugent, thank you so much for being with us today. And I thoroughly enjoyed this. I've learned a lot about you and your district. And what I think I was so most moved by is when you talked about what moved you to take the step to become an alderman. And I was so impressed with that, because it spoke to how you felt emotionally, your family, the world. I think sometimes people just sort of jump into things for reasons that may not be centered on service, or they've got other agendas, but yours came from the heart, and I was really moved and impressed by that. I'd like to remind everyone watching this, the link to this program will be found on the Chicago League's website. And everyone who registered for today's program who is not a league member will receive an email with the link, along with an invitation to join the league, as well as to sign up for notices of further programs, future programs. Next week, again on Thursday, 3 weeks from tonight, on Thursday, April 21st, we will have Alderman Nicholas Sposato, the 38th Ward. And we hope you will join us for future Zooming with the Alderman. Thank you once again, Alderman Nugent. You were wonderful. This was great. Thank you for being patient with me, and I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Well, thank you. It was a real pleasure. I had a good time.